All right, let's get to some other things, including there was a sighting of a ghost today. Now, the ghost decided to turn up on a Poodles podcast, and this is what happened.
I'm surprised that I got as much done as I did, given the difficult circumstances, political circumstances we faced.
Do you think we would have won the Prime Minister, the election, if you'd stayed as the Prime Minister?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's not many people who
doubt
that, actually.
No, I agree.
The reality, Christopher, is, and you understand this very well, I think most people do, is that during my time as Prime Minister, I was fighting always on two fronts, but that, there's no point complaining about it. That was the circumstances.
That was the pitch you were given to play on.
Oh, my wrist's really sore. The ghost, fair dinkum. Okay, apart from anything else, let's deal with some data here. Because even a merchant banker with an ego as big as his would be able to understand this. I want to tell you about 4 places in Australia. One is the seat of Lindsay in Western Sydney. One is the seat of Braddon in Tasmania. One is Longman, which is in Queensland, and Herbert, which is also in Queensland. In 2013, all of those seats were won by the Liberal Party. In 2016, under Malcolm Turnbull, all of them were lost. And all of them happened to be won again when he was no longer Prime Minister. The ghost. Thoughts, Richard?
Look, I'm not surprised by Malcolm's interventions and he has a failing memory, Malcolm. He's a very bright fellow, apparently, because he tells everybody he's very bright, and I'm sure he is. But there is a memory problem. There is definitely some little amnesiac thing in the background there, and it's just doing him a little bit of harm. But my advice to Malcolm is the same advice I've been really wanting to give him for a long time. Shut the you-know-what up, please.
Well, the book's coming out, and apparently it's all still...
At least one I won't read.
Yeah, correct. It's not even a doorstop I'd think about. And if anyone gives it to me for Christmas, I'll interpret it as hate, and you will never be spoken to again.
I don't think it's coming out for your Christmas story.
Oh, you mean he can't get it through the lawyers?
I don't know.
Janine, he's your mate. What do you think?
From the other day, he was looking quite well at the Australian Chamber Orchestra dinner. Good to see him there. I thought the interesting...
Now you're trying to trigger Rowan and me.
Yeah. Well, he's out and about, in the electorate, we see him. Look, I thought the one that amused me was just that little, just such a Malcolm thing. Well, everybody would agree with that. I mean, only a few people would not agree. I mean, we've obviously got the sum total of the couple of people who didn't see it. And as you know...
Everyone on the other side of this glass.
I know, I'm pointing that out. And as you'd know, Paul, as you'd know, Christopher...
Oh, yes, of course. I like how he tries to call him Prime Minister still. What an informal way to do a podcast, too. Who would have thought there was a way to go down from Pine and Miles, but there is now. Isn't there? Pine time. Oh. Also, let's throw on top of this too, again, let's actually talk about some maths here, which is 1 million votes left the coalition in 2016, and in part one of the reasons why they were able to get back the one-seat majority was because there was greater preference discipline that existed and was exhausted from Pauline Hanson. That would not have been the case if Malcolm was still Prime Minister. I don't know what the veracity, how ferocious the campaign that Clyde Palmer would have put in there, but also don't forget the maths here too. He was only going to be defending a one-seat majority, and it was pretty obvious that Tony Abbott was done in Warringah a whole lot earlier than whenever an election was going to be held. So here's the answer, Malcolm. What seat would you have won? Because they didn't lose Chisholm. Where would he have won? What would he have flipped? What is the magical thing? During his own campaign where he lost 14 seats, again, this is a bloke who didn't win a single seat under his leadership, did not go forward a step after going back 14. That's why you can say with absolute certainty he wouldn't have won.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull is rapidly overtaking Kevin Rudd and Billy McMahon as the very worst Australian Prime Minister ever. He's probably now overtaken them easily. That was hilarious, that interview. It was actually like watching Clark and Dawes or Python or something like that. You had to watch and go, are these two really good actors impersonating these two? Because they had Pine down to a T. Oh, hang on, it was Pine. No one else would interview
He is a living parody.
So sycophantically, it was nauseating. But Malcolm Turnbull's self-delusion, and you've gone through the facts there, Paul. The idea, as Janine said, that, oh, nobody doubts that. Everybody doubts that. The entire Liberal Party doubted that Malcolm Turnbull could win the election. That's why there was moves to put Peter Dutton in, and that's why Malcolm Turnbull, let's not forget the guy resigned, first of all. Here again we see his appalling judgment. The guy, I don't know where this idea that he's the smartest person in the room comes from. He always strikes me as the stupidest person in the room. The stupidest person in the room. How stupid would you have to be to sit there and seriously think that you had a hope in hell of winning that election?
Can I just pick it up while you're calling people stupid? Didn't the Prime Minister agree with him?
He did. They don't disagree with him.
Well, there was somebody. You said there's no one. There's one, the Prime Minister.
Come on, he's just saying that. He's, you know,
Well,
seriously.
saying it's
Otherwise,
pretty powerful.
why would he have stood? Now, you know, that's the point. His colleagues recognised that he was a train wreck. They recognised they'd been betrayed. They recognised that the whole approach to Abbott was a mistake. They recognised that Turnbull had failed to deliver on anything that he'd promised to deliver on, and the Australian public had made up their mind with 40 news polls in a row that the guy was a dog.
And what's his legacy? What?
He said today,
Only same-sex marriage.
remember the-
Tony Abbott brought...
Peter Dutton, Matthias Cormann, absolutely. And it was from before his Prime Minister.
He did absolutely
Well, it happened
nothing.
on
as
his
distinct-
watch. I mean, you have to say it happened on his
nothing.
watch. He has to get the credit for it.
Yes, sure, it happened on his watch. But to sit there and say, I didn't get all... I'm surprised I got so much achieved or whatever. He did not achieve anything. His legacy is a joke. And it's the single biggest disaster the Liberal Party ever made was getting rid of Abbott.
He says his legacy was Scott Morrison because it wasn't Peter Dutton, and I would have thought you would think that's a good thing that Scott Morrison's in
the
there.
way that on his way out, he tried to throw into that little interview. Oh, and by the way, not everyone liked Scott either. He's just a poisonous ghost. But good luck to him in the next little while.